What's up, gamers? I'm the Lights, and it's week 2 of GMs in Season of the Deep. We have Fallen Saber this week, dropping the Adept version of the reissued Loaded Question. We're going to talk about the Loaded Question rules you might want, as well as how to get through the Fallen Saber strike quickly and painlessly. So, Loaded Question was a ritual or pursuit or pinnacle or whatever it was called. Weapon back from Season of the Forge, Season 5. You got it from Vanguard, and it's an ARC high impact frame fusion rifle. So, high impact frame fusion rifles are not my favorite or anyone's favorite, as far as I'm aware. The rapid fire frame fusion rifles are pretty hot right now in PvE, though, as is the Techian Force from Last Wish because of the new perk Controlled Burst. And Loaded Question can get Controlled Burst. There's some great first column perks to pair with Controlled Burst as well. We've got Auto-Loading Holster, Envious Assassin, Overflow, a lot of good stuff here. As an alternative to Controlled Burst, you also have the other goated PvE fusion rifle perk, Reservoir Burst. Great potential synergy there with Overflow or Envious with Reservoir Burst. This gun seems solid. Seems like the type of gun everybody with the means will grab a good roll of, but then will probably just leave it in the vault for a year. There's just a lot of good arc fusions. I'd rather have a Controlled Burst Techian Force than a Controlled Burst Loaded Question. The Volt Shot Iterative Loop is great. There's also Plug 1, which gets Reservoir Burst. In that same vein, though, Loaded Question could serve as an alternative to some of those other fusions if you don't have them, though, I guess. In fact, as far as Reservoir Burst is concerned, I think I actually like Loaded Question's perk pool quite a bit better than Plug 1's. Plug 1, you usually went Reservoir Burst with Compulsive Reloader, which is quite a solid roll, but I'll take Overflow or Envious Assassin or Auto-Loading or anything like that on the Loaded Question over Compulsive Reloader, so maybe that's enough to make up for the inferior archetype. Major perks are all that really matter on this gun for PvE, but for mag, I like to go for either accelerated coils or more mag size if possible. And then just solid all-around stat bumps from the barrel and the masterwork if you can get it. But now getting into builds and team compositions for this strike, you'll be facing an arc threat with barrier and overload champions. You'll be bolstered by strand and arc surges as well as overcharge fusion rifle. In case you don't know how the whole surge and overcharge deal works, you can get some extra overcharge weapons with some of the seasonal artifact mods, and basically anything that does arc damage, strand damage, or is a fusion rifle is getting a 25% damage buff to everything in this activity. If you're on an arc or strand subclass, the subclasses that match the surges that is, your kinetic weapons will also gain that 25% damage. You also can't get any of these sources to stack, so if you were using an arc fusion rifle, for example, even though there's both an arc surge giving you 25% and overcharge fusion giving you 25%, they don't stack, so you're just getting the 25. This strike isn't as picky about team composition as a lot of others are, in my opinion, so you can get away with a lot of different things. With Strand Surge, it makes suspend spam strand builds even more of a no-brainer than they normally are. I'd recommend having one person on your team on Strand if possible with a suspend focused build. These suspend builds, when well crafted, are plenty to lock down entire rooms on their own. So from there, I'd go for some subclasses that bring some damage, stuff like Arc Warlock and Arc Titan, since the Arc Surge will be helping those subclasses do a ton of work. Arc Hunter with Assassin's Cowl is also ridiculously strong with Arc Surge if you know how to pilot it well, but it's tricky to do in GMs just because the enemies are so lethal, but if that's your jam, it might be worth a try. The old GM standard of having someone on your fire team run Aeons is a great call, or you could do a Warlock with the Cenotaph Mask instead. That's something my team did, especially since Divinity is going to be fantastic in this strike for its ability to instantly stun overloads among, the obvious other advantages of using Divinity. For weapons on the other players, the world is kind of your oyster, honestly. I think a default kind of setup you could go for, and a lot of people will probably go for, is to go a Chill Clip Fusion to stun overloads off of the slow and take advantage of Overcharge Fusion. You could pair that with an Arc Auto Rifle for anti-barrier auto rifle and to take advantage of the Arc Surge. We also have Overload Scout, which you could pair with Arbalest, another classic. But the strike on the whole is fairly close range, so I like the Fusion and Auto Rifle loadout a bit better as a default. Wish Ender and Revision Zero are other great options for barrier. Forbearance chews through trash ads like crazy with Arc Surge, although I don't recommend Forbearance as much as normal in this strike just because a lot of the ads are either too spread out for it or floating or just don't really die to it. You could go for the Navigator with Overload Trace Rifle and Strand Surge. That gun's great. Blinding GLs. Risk Runner is another great one since this strike has a ton of arc damage as well as Arc Surge, of course. Quicksilver Storm is great. Thunderlord's pretty good. Lots of stuff you can go for. Just make sure that across the 3 players on your team, you have at least 2 total ways to stun each champion type consistently, and try to avoid running double primary on anybody. You also have Arc Jolt and Strand Unravel, which will be able to help out a little bit with the Overload and Barrier champion stunning. These are also both things you can have pretty good uptime on. For heavies, I tend to prefer rockets or machine guns in GMs, and those are always what I recommend. No real difference here. My team went with rockets, but machine guns are great as well. Now let's get into the actual strike. Fallen Saber to me is a pretty middle-of-the-road strike in terms of difficulty, with most of the ways you die being just BS that'll just get you if you have a little bit of a, you know, lapse in focus. Oh, what the f-
Uh-oh.
Yeah, if you just get amplified.
Alive, bro. Starting off, just Sparrow towards the objective, trying not to get one-shot by the patrol ads because they eviscerate your Sparrow on GM difficulty. When you get to the first section where the satellite falls in, make sure to keep a safe distance from the satellite because it can one-shot you from surprisingly far away on this difficulty. And then we already have some nice tech where you can use certain emotes to clip inside of the satellite and just sit there until the ads despawn, and then your team can catch up with you and enter the bunker. If you're not doing the emote cheese, this first section isn't anything crazy. Be sure to shoot the turrets off of the fallen dropships coming in. They can do a lot of damage. You can use heavy for this if you need, and just keep your head on a swivel in this encounter. If you're struggling with this section or just want to be as safe as possible, the ad waves spawn based on the progression of your little counter on the warsat. This progress only happens while at least one player is standing in the circle around the warsat, so you can use this to your advantage by having your whole team leave the circle when you see an ad wave coming in, then step back in when the ad waves have been dealt with. The section where you initially enter the bunker can be a little tricky, since if you get stuck in the entrance to the bunker, you can get nuked pretty fast by all the ads just shooting at where you're funneling in through. If you want to play back in the entrance hallway, you can park a Sparrow in the doorway to keep it from closing, but be careful not to die to your Sparrow blowing up because that can definitely happen and it makes you feel not very cool. If you can get over there safely, the little corridor on the left side feels really good to play from. That's definitely what I'd recommend. You've got 1 barrier and 1 overload in here. Since the barrier is a servitor, you pretty much gotta get rid of it first and then get rid of the overload afterwards, since the barrier is going to make everything immune. Use heavy as needed here, get Aeons or Cenotaph procs where possible. Once the room is clear, you'll need to go down to the end of the room and open this little thingy to shoot a fuse, which will spawn a few Exploder Shanks and 2 overloads, as well as some Vandals and stuff. Play around cover here and deal with the champs and the other ads the same way you did the first few. To make it a little safer and potentially quicker, the 2 overloads spawn in the hallway that you entered the bunker through and spawn immediately following the fuse breaking. So you can break the fuse from afar and spawn trap the 2 champions and just nuke them down before dealing with the rest of the ads. The hallway with the little lightning poles is a very frustrating spot to wipe at, and you get a lot of deaths in there just due to carelessness. Just be patient and have 1 player grab the charge and the other 2 hang back to get rid of the shanks so the charge carrier is unobstructed. As the carrier, you can't do a whole lot with the orb in your hand, but you can slide with it or get amplified before you pick it up. Both will make your walk back to dunk a lot easier. After that, we have a pair of fairly straightforward rooms to go through with a few champs each. Nothing crazy here, pretty standard GM type stuff. The boss room is a little interesting. See, this little slope here has a rich history of randomly one-shotting players on their way down, so I just choose to jump over it completely personally, but the change to physics not being able to kill you outright anymore makes it a little less deadly. But what difference does it really make if you get launched across the room with a sliver of HP so an ad can just blow on you, take you down? But other than that, other than the slope of death, boss room really isn't too hard, but there also isn't really very much cover. And there are kind of arc hazards that spawn every so often that'll kill you pretty much instantly if you're not paying attention. So just keep your head on a swivel for that stuff. For shanks, you're going to have 2 barriers that spawn in here as well, 1 for each of the boss's first and second health gates. Just focus the boss down when it's out, since it basically just turns into a spectator when it's not damageable, and having it out of the way makes dealing with the other ads much easier. After a little while though, just 3 damage phases, that's the strike, that's it. Pretty quick one, makes a decent farm if you're short golf balls or really want some rolls of the fusion or some exotics or whatever. So get in there, give it a try. Subscribe for more videos like this one on all the GMs this season, as well as tons of other cool stuff. Leave a comment on what stuff you've had success with in this GM and what you think of Loaded Question, what roles you're farming for and whatnot. Like the video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.